Today we are going to make pumpkin buns with pumpkin filling inside. I'm also going to show you two different styles to shape the buns to look like pumpkins. Let's get started. We'll start by making the pumpkin puree. Cut the pumpkin into small cubes. Steam for 20 minutes until they're soft. Drain the excess water and then transfer it into a blender and puree until smooth. Take out 500 grams of the puree and transfer them into a non-stick pan. This will be used as the bun's filling. Add unsalted butter, sugar, milk powder, and cornstarch into it. Cook this on medium-low heat until it thickens. Stir this constantly so you won't accidentally burn it. The milk powder will enhance the flavor and pair with our bread very nicely. You can skip it though if you don't have any, or if you don't like it. If you want super silky puree, you could run the puree through a sifter after you blended it. The portion of pumpkin I bought with skin on without the guts and seeds weighed 984 grams. After I cut off the skin, it weighed 795 grams. After I steam it, it weighed 720 grams. I need a total of 600 grams of pumpkin puree, so I have a little extra left, which is fine. So you can use this as a general guide on how big of a pumpkin you should start with. When it thickens and becomes a paste, it's good. It will thicken up a little more once it's cool. Transfer it onto a plate or bowl, then cover it with a plastic wrap. Make sure the plastic wrap is touching the surface of our filling. Let this cool off completely in the fridge for a few hours or overnight. Now let's make the bread. First, add all the ingredients except the butter into a mixing bowl. I'm just using cold milk. Cold or room temperature is fine. Don't pour in all the milk, reserve a little bit, because the water content left in the pumpkin puree will be different for everybody. If at the end the dough is too dry, then we can add the rest of the milk. Attach the dough hook attachment and mix this on low on number 1 until everything is incorporated. Once everything is mixed well, turn this on medium-high speed and mix for about 5 minutes. I'm using speed number 6. The maximum speed of my mixer is 10. We want to mix until the dough is formed into a ball and we can stretch the dough without breaking. The texture is still a little rough at this point. Scrape the bowl. Now add the softened butter and mix it on number 1 until the butter is mixing with the dough. Once it's mixed with the dough, turn the speed back to medium-high and mix for another 6 to 8 minutes. We want to mix this until we can stretch the dough to form a thin film without breaking. If your dough is extremely sticky, then it's probably too wet. If so, you can add a little bit of flour and mix a little more. If after 3 to 4 minutes in, your dough is still falling apart and not sticking together yet, then it's probably too dry. You can add a little bit of milk and keep mixing. Either way, you want to add very little amount of flour or milk and keep checking. Don't overdo it. For my dough today, I only used 40 grams of milk. This is good. Now transfer this to the counter. The mixer already did all the hard work. We just want to give it a few quick kneads to smooth out everything and form it into a smooth ball. Put this back into the bowl and let it proof for about an hour until it's doubled in size. If you have a thermometer, you can test the temperature of your dough now. The ideal temperature is between 77 to 86 degrees. Cover the bowl and let it proof in a warm place. I like to mark how big the dough is now on the plastic so I can tell if it's proof enough. Because a lot of time I forgot how big it was before it starts. Poke a few holes for air to circulate. I like to proof my dough in the oven, placing a bowl of hot water in there to create a moist and warm environment. I will also leave a little crack so the oven door won't close all the way. We want the air to be moist but not too wet. Now back to the dough temperature I mentioned before. If the temperature is too low, it will take longer to proof. Likewise, if the temperature is too high, then the proofing time will be shorter. Short proofing time is not necessarily a good thing, because if the dough rises too much before it gets baked, it will collapse. If after you finish mixing and your dough temperature is over 86 degrees, then cover it and put it in the fridge for 10 minutes, then proof. This is why we don't start with warm milk in the beginning, because we are mixing the dough for a long time. If we start this with warm milk, by the time it's done mixing, the dough temperature will be too high. Never proof your dough for less than 30 minutes or over 1.5 hours. Meanwhile, we can cut some cotton strings to make the pumpkin design for our buns later. Each string is about 40 inches long. Place the strings in a bowl and soak them with vegetable oil. When it's done proofing, you can test it by poking your finger into it. If it doesn't collapse or spring back and hold the shape, then that means it's good. Transfer the dough onto the counter. Flatten it slightly to carry off the big air bubbles and divide it into 8 portions. Pinch it around to form a ball, then cover them and let them rest for about 15 minutes. Meanwhile, we can get the strings ready. Squeeze away the excess oil and lay them out. I'm going to use 2 strands per bun because my strings are too thin. If you can get a thicker cotton string, then a single strand will be enough. Take the pumpkin filling out from the fridge. Divide it into 8 portions. Now back to our dough. Flatten it with your hands or a rolling pin. Doing this will help to remove bubbles trapped in the dough. Flip this over so the smoother part will be in the bottom. Press the sides around and pop all the little bubbles you may see. Wrap the filling and seal the dough nicely. For the first pumpkin design, slightly flatten the bun. Flour a knife and make 8 cuts. For the second pumpkin design, lay the cotton string on the counter. Place the bun on there and wrap it around. We are wrapping it very lightly. It's basically just touching the bun's surface. Tie a couple of loose knots and trim off the excess strings. Put these on a pan lined with parchment paper. Lightly cover them with plastic wrap. Let them proof again for 45 minutes to an hour until it's about 1.5 times the original size. When it's about done, preheat the oven to 350 degrees. Brush the buns with egg wash. Bake for 15 to 18 minutes. And this is it. They're super soft and fluffy when they came out of the oven. Once they are cool, we can remove the strings. Make some cuts on the strings, both at the bottom and the top. When peeling off the strings, they are going to stick a little, and as you can see, part of it has sunk into the bread. So peel it off slowly from the top to the bottom of our buns. So if we accidentally tear the surface, at least it will be at the bottom. And this is now completed. I hope you'll enjoy this. Thanks so much for watching.